Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If not, welcome back and thank you for supporting me. I'm Coretta. Okay y'all, so I am still in the process of learning how to digitize. I've taken a class and I'm also enrolled in a couple of schools. So in this video, I am going to show you how I design the interlocking embroidery letters. Come on, y'all. Let's see how I did it. To create my interlocking letters embroidery design, I am going to be designing the file in Silhouette Studio and then taking it into Embrillance to add the stitches. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add my text. And to add my text, I am going to select the text tool on the left toolbar. I am going to select anywhere on the canvas and I am going to type C and D. And once I'm finished typing, I am going to select anywhere on the canvas. Next, I am going to select the font. And to select the font, I am going to select my letters. And then on the right toolbar, I am going to select the text style panel, and it is the icon with the upper and lowercase a. When the panel opens, I am going to select my font. And for this project, I am going to select Freshman as my font. Now that I have the font selected, I'm just going to make it bigger by I'm going to increase the size by using the corner handles, and I'm just making it larger so that you can see what I am doing. So I'm just going to make it larger. The next thing I want to do is position my letters. And to do that, I am going to first ungroup them. To ungroup them, I am going to make sure that the letters are selected, and on the top menu, I'm going to select Object and then Ungroup. After the letters are ungrouped, I am going to position them how I want them. Once the letters are positioned, I am going to select the letter that I want to be in the front. And for my letters, I want the C to be in the front, so I'm going to select the C. You would select whichever letter you would want to be in the front. And so that I can move this letter to the front, I am going to go to the top toolbar. I'm going to select Object, Arrange, and then Bring to Front. Before I go to the next step, I am going to create a duplicate of this design here so that I can use it to create other layers for my design. And to duplicate it, I am going to select the entire design. And on the top menu, I'm going to select Object. I'm going to select Replicate. And I'm going to select Duplicate Left. And I'm just going to continue to move this duplicate off of the canvas. Then I am going to change the color of the letter C so that I can identify the overlapping or the interlocking areas on the D. And to change the color, I am going to select the C that is on the canvas. On the right toolbar, I'm going to select the Fill panel, and it is the icon that looks like a paint palette. And then I'm going to change the color to orange. Now with the C changed to orange, I can see where the letters overlap or where I can interlock them. And I can see here anything that is behind this part of the C is the part that I don't want, because when I embroider this file, I don't want anything behind this letter C to stitch out. And so I need to remove the lines here. And to do that, I am going to be using the knife tool. So on the left toolbar, I am going to select the knife tool. And then I am going to slice or cut this line that's at the bottom of the C. I want to cut that line to the D. And to do this, I am going to hold down my shift key so that I can make sure that I get a straight line. And then I am going to drag my cursor across that line. And then I'm going to let go. And on the top, I am going to select apply. I am going to repeat that to cut all of the lines. So select the knife tool, hold down my shift key, draw my line, select apply, select the knife tool, hold down my shift key, draw my line, select apply, get my knife tool, hold my shift key, draw my line, and select apply. Once I've done all of my cuts, I am going to remove the C, and I am going to select the area. I'm going to select delete, and I'm going to select this area, and I'm going to select delete. And now that I've removed the overlapping or the interlocking area, I can place my letter C back here. Then I am going to remove the color from the letter C. And so I'm going to select the letter C, make sure I'm on my fill panel, and then I'm going to select none. Then I am going to group the letters together so that they can move as one object. And to do this, I'm going to select the entire design, and on the top menu, I'm going to select object and then group. Now I want these interlocking letters to be a double applique. And so I need to create the top applique and the outer applique. And to create the top applique, I am going to use my duplicate. So I'm going to move this off of the canvas for now. And I'm going to select the duplicate, and I'm going to put that on the canvas. I am going to select, make sure that the entire design is selected. And then I'm going to weld it to make it one complete object. And to weld it, I am going to go to the top menu, select object, and I'm going to select modify, and then I'm going to select weld. So this piece, this group right here is going to be my top applique, and I want to create a outer applique that will then make both of them a double applique. And so to create the outer applique, I am going to add an offset. And to add an offset, I am going to make sure that the entire design is selected. On the right toolbar, I'm going to select the offset panel, and it is the icon that looks like a star with an outline. I am going to select offset. I am going to change my offset to 0.55, and I'm going to hit enter. You can make your offset as large as you want your offset to be, But for me, this is the size that I want because it will allow me to put satin stitches on the design without them actually touching. So my top applique will have satin stitches and my outer applique will have satin stitches, and they will not touch. I want to also make sure that my offset corners are sharp. So I'm going to select sharp corners, and then I'm going to select apply. I want to remove this little piece right here that is inside of my offset. And so I am going to move the offset over here, and I'm going to make sure that it is selected. On the top menu, I'm going to select object. Then I'm going to select release compound. The offset is now separated, and I am going to select this little piece right here, and I'm going to delete it using the keyboard, and that will remove the middle, that little speck that was in the middle of my offset. Now I have all of the layers for my interlocking letters double applique. So this layer is the outer applique. This layer is the top applique. And this layer is going to be the satin stitches for my top layer applique. Next, I am going to change the line colors of each layer so that when I open it in Embrillance, I can distinguish the layers. And so for the outer applique, I want to change the line color to green. And to change the line color, I am going to make sure that the outer applique is selected. And on the right toolbar, I'm going to select the line style panel, and it is the icon with the 3 lines. I am going to select the second icon, which is line color. And then I am going to select green. For the top applique, I am going to select blue. And then for the satin stitches of the top applique, I am going to change that to pink. Then I am going to align everything center. So I'm going to select all of the layers. And then on the top menu, I'm going to select object, align, and align center and middle. And finally, I am going to size it so that it fits into my 5x7 embroidery hoop. You can size it to what the size is for the hoop that you want to use. But this project, I'm just going to size it down to about, to fit my 5x7 hoop. So I wanted to fit my 5x7 embroidery hoop. So I'm just going to make it like about that big. Now I am going to save the design as an SVG so that I can take it into Embrillance. And to save the file, I am going to select the entire design. On the top menu, I'm going to select File. I'm going to select Save Selection. I'm going to select Save to Hard Drive. I am going to name my file. And then I am going to make sure that my Save As type, I'm going to change that to SVG. And then I'm going to select OK. So here in Embrillance, I am using Stitch Artist Level 3, and I have my 5x7 hoop selected. The first thing that I am going to do is add my design to the canvas. And to add the design, I am going to go to the toolbar and I am going to select Create Design. And it is the fourth icon from the right. And then on the tool pane, I'm going to select Vector. And this is the icon that is on the left of the tool pane. And it is right under Image. So I'm going to select that. And then I am going to navigate to where the file is located. And I am going to select my design. And then I'm going to select Open. If I take a look at the objects view, I can see all of the objects for my design. The first three objects, 1, 2, and 3, are the pink layer, which is the satin stitch portion for my top applique. This green line here, which is the fourth step and the fourth object, is the outer applique. And these two pieces here, 5 and 6, are the top applique here. This is the top applique outline here. And so what I need to do for this is to combine these two pieces, because this piece here goes with that piece there. And to combine both of these objects, I am going to, on this object view, I'm going to select the first object. I'm going to hold down my control key, and I am going to select my second object. And then on the top menu, I'm going to select Create. I'm going to select Outline. And I'm going to select Combine Holes. And then that is going to combine those two objects together. And now you can see the interlocking letters for the top applique. And that's the C, and that was the center of the D. Now that I have my objects combined, I am going to convert this to a double applique embroidery file. I am going to create first the applique placement for the outer piece, which is this outer applique, and the outer applique is the green portion of my file. So I'm going to select that piece. I'm going to also check to make sure that I am on the Create Design. So to make sure that the Create Design icon is selected. And then on the tool pane under Stitches, I am going to select Run. And under Stitches, there are 2 rows of stitches here. And the Run stitch is the second icon on the top row. After I select the Run stitch, I'm going to go down to the right to the Properties panel. And on the Run tab, I want to make sure that my type is single and that my length is 2.5. Then I'm going to go to the second icon that looks like a bow tie. I'm going to select it, and then I want it to tie on the entry and tie on the exit. And this is going to keep my thread from unraveling because it's going to put a knot at the beginning of the stitch and it's going to put a knot at the end of the stitch. Next, I want to create the tack down for the outer applique. And to do this, I am going to make sure that the placement of the outer applique is selected. And on the toolbar, I'm going to select copy. And then I'm going to select paste. When I paste, it created a duplicate of the outer applique. And so now I'm going to go to my properties, and on the run tab, I'm going to go back to the first icon, and I am going to change my type to double, and I'm going to leave my stitch width, my length at 2.5, and then I'm going to select this bow tie just to make sure that my tie at entry and tie at exit is still selected. And then I am going to go to the color tab, and I am going to change the color to put in a manual color stop. And to change the color, I'm going to select this color swatch. And then I'm just going to select another color green. And then I'm going to select OK. Now I am going to create the satin border for the outer applique, making sure that the second duplicate is still selected. On the objects view, I can see it's still selected. On the toolbar, I'm going to select copy and then paste. And on the objects view, you can see it pasted another copy of the outer applique. Then I am going to go up to the tool pane under stitches, and I am going to select satin border, and that will be the third icon on that top row. Down in the properties view, I am going to select the satin border tab, and I am going to change my stitch width to 4. So I'm going to change it to 4. And you can use this slider bar, or you can just type it here. And this stitch width here is going to tell you, it controls how wide you want your stitches to be. And I am going to also change my density to 5. So I'm going to highlight it, type 5, and hit enter. And this is going to control how close your stitches are. And I am going to select this bow tie again to make sure that my tie on entry and my tie on exit is selected. I'm going to check the underlay of my satin stitches. And to do that, I am going to select this second icon on the satin borders tab, and I am going to uncheck edge run, and then I'm going to keep the parallel and the zigzag checked. Next, I am going to select the color tab. I'm going to select the color swatch, and I am going to change the color. And let me see, what color do I want? I'm going to choose this color here, and then I'm going to select OK. So now for my outer applique, I have a placement stitch, I have a tack down stitch, and I have a satin border. And if you want to rename them, you can. You would just double click here, and then you could type tack down. And that's just so you can distinguish what your stitches are, what each step is. And then you could double click here and type placement, just so you can make sure that you know what your steps are. Now I am going to create the applique placement stitches for the top applique. So in the objects view, I am going to select the welded interlocking letters, and that is the blue layer. On the tool pane under stitches, I'm going to select the run stitch. In the property view, I'm going to select the run tab, and I want my stitch type to be single, and I want my length to be 2.5. I am going to check to make sure that the tie on entry and tie on exit is selected. And I'm also going to check to make sure that now that that this layer is also the bottom layer, because I want this to stitch out after the outer double out after the outer applique. I want the top applique to stitch, so it's at the bottom. Next, I am going to create the tack down stitch for the top applique. And so I'm just going to make sure that the welded letters are selected. And on the toolbar, I'm going to select copy and paste. It created a duplicate of the welded letters. Then on the property view, I'm going to select the properties for the run stitch, and I want to change my type to double, and I'm going to leave it at 2.5 stitch length. I am also going to make sure that the tie on entry and tie at exit is selected. I am going to select the color tab. I'm going to select the color swatch, and I am going to change the color. So I'm going to change it to this, I'll change it to this purple here, and then I'm going to select OK. Now I am going to create the satin borders for my top applique. And for the satin border, I am going to be using these 3 pieces right here so that I can create my satin border. And remember, these 3 pieces are the pieces where I removed the overlapping lines. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to select them in the order that I want them to stitch out. So I'm going to select the first one. I want the center of the D to stitch out first. And so I'm going to select that one. And on the on the tool pane under stitches, I am going to select satin border. On the satin border tab, I want my stitch width to be 4. I want my density to be 5. I am going to make sure that my tie on entry is selected, and I'm going to uncheck the tie at exit because I do not want the machine to stop stitching, because I want it to stitch the entire satin border before I tie a knot. And so then I am going to select my underlay properties. I'm going to make sure that the edge run is unchecked. Parallel and zigzag is checked. I am going to repeat these steps for the next piece. So for the D, I'm going to select the D. On the tool pane, I'm going to select satin border. On the properties view, satin borders tab, I want my width to be 4. I want my density to be 5. I am going to check the tie on entry and tie on exit. I am going to uncheck tie on entry because, again, I don't want it to stop. So I don't want it to make a knot right here. And then I am going to go to the underlay, and I am going to make sure edge run is unchecked and parallel and zigzag is checked. For the C, I'm going to select the C, and I am going to go to the toolbar, and I am going to select satin border. I want, on the properties, I'm going to select the satin border tab. I want my stitch width to be 4. I want my density to be 5. And on the, I'm going to select the bow tie because I want to now, I'm not going to check tie at entry. I'm going to check tie at exit. And that is so that now it will close out the satin border, so it'll tie a knot once it's finished. Then I'm going to go to my underlay properties, and I'm going to make sure that the edge run is not checked and the parallel and zigzag is checked. Now that the applique design is complete, let's take a look at the stitch simulator to make sure that everything will stitch out how I want it. To open the stitch simulator, I am going to select the stitch simulator icon on the top toolbar, and it is the 7th icon from the right. So I'm going to select that. And here you have like your control buttons, your stop, and this is your stitch here. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to manually drag the control so that I can see the stitches. So I'm just going to drag it. So here is my tack down, this is my placement, and this is my tack down, and this is my satin border. This is my placement, this is my tack down, and this is my satin border. So everything looks okay to me. And next I am going to do a color sort. And this will make the stitch out more efficient and reduce any extra color changes. To color sort, I am going to select Utilities on the top menu. I am going to select Color Sort. When the Color Sort window opens, it will indicate that the design has been sorted, but this design was not reduced. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to then select New View. A new design page will open with the changes, and I am going to go over to the right. I'm going to expand the objects panel, and here you can see my placement stitch for the outer applique. You can see my tack down stitch for the outer applique. You can see the satin border for the outer applique. You can see the tack down stitch for the top applique, and this is the placement stitch, and then this is the tack down stitch for the top applique, and this is the satin border for the top applique. With the stitches complete, I am going to save the file. And to save the file, I am going to go to File on the top menu, and I am going to select Save as Stitch and Working. I am going to name my file. Navigating to where I want to save it, I'm going to name my file. And then I'm going to make sure that the save as type is PES, and then I'm going to select save. So that is how I created a interlocking letters double applique design. Check out my next video to see how I stitch it out. All right, guys, that's all for now. I hope that you're able to follow along with my process. If you like this video and would like to see more, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you could be notified every time I upload a video. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will respond back. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.